Chapter 6. Do you understand how serious it is to mention the name Sieghart? Glenn Sieghart employed a small amount of pressure into his gaze. Rayon bit his lip so hard that it nearly bled. It feels like my flesh is being crushed. The pressure that Glenn was exerting was a small amount, a cup of water against the vast ocean. However, it felt as though his heart was being squeezed. He could feel his clothes become sticky because of the cold sweat he broke into. If he hadn't practiced the ring of fire, he might have fainted already. Is this the warrior, the destructive king of the north? Considering his gaze alone held such pressure, his prowess surpassed Darius Robert. It was impossible to raise his head. Try saying it again. Can you take responsibility for what you've just said? My lord. Rayon is still young. He doesn't know what he is talking about. That's true. Rayon has lived in the annex building all this time, so he doesn't know about the name of Sieghart. Sylvia and Helen ran next to him and knelt. My lord, he is just a child who doesn't know anything. Please withdraw your pressure. Denier Sieghart stood up and defended them against the pressure. Sir Denier. As expected of Sir Denier, he would even care for an insolent kid like him. The broadness of his mind is even greater than his might. The collaterals praised Denier's behavior. I am speaking right now. Ugh. Denier and Sylvia both stepped back at once, hearing Glenn's mighty voice. They didn't move on their own. Glenn pushed them back with his voice alone. I'm sorry. Denier lowered his head, but Sylvia was different. Father. She approached Glenn, enduring his pressure with her frail body, which didn't even possess aura. Rayon is not yet ready to train. Sylvia's eyes reflected that she was solely worried about him. It pulled at Rayon's heartstrings. I don't understand. He was choked up, but he couldn't tell if that emotion meant compassion, or worry, or something else. He just wished that she would always smile happily, instead of being in that state. I was an assassin. An assassin was a being that lived in the darkness. Being closer to death than life, they would never show themselves. However, I no longer am one. I'm not going to live as an assassin anymore. As Rayon Sieghart, and not as Rayon the assassin, he resolved that he would return Sylvia to her original place. Crash! At that moment, he could hear a sound similar to one of the chains around his neck falling. I do not know. Rayon forced himself to raise his head, facing Glenn's overbearing gaze directly. Suppressing the urge to close his eyes, he continued. I've been raised in the annex building, and not in the main building. I don't know how high and mighty Sieghart is. Rayon! Sylvia desperately called for him, but he didn't look back. That's why I want to see for myself what kind of place is Sieghart, by participating in training. Once Rayon finished talking, everyone held their breath and looked at Glenn. One of Glenn's eyebrows raised slightly. Do you mean that you will judge Sieghart from basic training? That is the only way I can learn about Sieghart right now. Then I will have to make sure that the instructor is fully prepared, so that you won't be disappointed. The room of audience became as quiet as a mouse, as Glenn's red eyes blazed. Being unable to withstand it any further, Rayon finally bowed his head. He was only 12 years old, a child who couldn't endure a thousandth of Glenn's pressure. Yet he didn't give in. If he kept cultivating the ring of fire, and learned an efficient way of handling aura, he would be able to properly stand in front of him one day. Deciding that he would show that with action instead of word, he clenched his teeth. One day, once everyone had left, only Glenn and his butler Ren remained in the silent audience chamber. Did you see? Yes, I saw it clearly. Ren nodded his head firmly in response to Glenn's question. That boy sure is something. The corners of Glenn's mouth lifted. A 12-year-old child that confidently talks back while withstanding my pressure. I have never seen something like that. It's my first time seeing it, as well. Ren smiled, tidying his hair. Not only his appearance, but his spirit is also just like my lord's in his childhood. Don't say strange things. Glenn snorted, as if telling him to stop spouting nonsense, but the corners of his mouth lifted even more, like a leaf blowing in the wind. Are you going to increase the difficulty of basic training? I shall, because many people have heard. Can young Master Rayon really pass? Participating would already be difficult. Glenn shook his head without hesitation. His condition is better thanks to the elixir, but neither his constitution nor his health is good enough. Maybe he can once he recovers a bit more, but it's impossible for now. Then why? I've already mentioned it. There are no exceptions for those inheriting the name of Sieghart. Roan licked his lips. He is still not honest. He could tell, as he had been with him for several dozen years. The reason Glenn called for Rayon wasn't to pressure him, but to protect him by showing others that he didn't discriminate against him. Once Rayon failed the training, he would probably give him an elixir and pretend to spare the rod and spoil the child. Although even Glenn shouldn't have expected Rayon to come forth. I like young Master Rayon's personality, but one thing worries me. It must be about the collateral and direct line's children. Yes. They won't have a considerable reaction, but he will be noticed in a way he hasn't been before. He withstood my lord's pressure, albeit a small amount. Measure should be. There is no need to provoke them. Just watch over him. Understood. Ren nodded immediately, despite his opinion being different, because Glenn was like a god to him. My lord, may I ask a question? If, by some chance, Rayon manages to pass the basic training, what are you going to do? Pass? Resting his chin on his hand, Glenn recalled the judgment ceremony from 7 years ago. Golden flame. He wasn't sure if it was a coincidence or an accident, but Rayon set ablaze the golden flame that only the first head of Zeekhart could use. That's impossible. However, if there is a 1 in 10,000th chance that it could happen. He smirked and stood from the throne. I will have to reward him accordingly. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Upon entering the annex building, Rayon was immediately dragged into Sylvia's room. Rayon. Sylvia firmly grasped Rayon's shoulders. Why did you do that? Zeekhart's training doesn't go easy on children. Your current health won't be able to handle it. You will just get hurt. Sylvia's voice was faint. Her worries for him made her hands tremble. I couldn't bear it. What? I'm not sure what emotion made me act like that. Rayon closed his eyes. It was true. Despite living with Sylvia and Helen for 12 years, his emotions were still light, like a pastel blue color. But my chest tightens whenever Mom gets scorned in the main building. That's why I wanted to say something. Because he didn't want to lie to Sylvia and Helen, Rayon replied honestly. Ah, young Master Rayon. Sylvia's lips parted, and Helen's lips trembled. Sigh. Sylvia released his shoulders and slowly closed, then opened her eyes. Rayon, thank you for your consideration. However, you are still young. You don't need to be so thoughtful, not when you are at an age where you should be pampered. But, you might not know, but Mommy is pretty strong. I can endure a lot more. Sylvia bit her tongue to stop her tears from spilling over. To such a child. Rayon was too kind to her. As if he noticed the atmosphere in the household, he didn't act like a spoiled child. He endured by himself, even while sick. Because he was such a kind and considerate child, she couldn't let him bring hardship upon himself. Mommy will talk to grandfather. If I ask him to postpone the training for just a single year, even he would. I will try. No, I can do it. Rayon shook his head. He did stand up for Sylvia, but there was also another reason. Basic training was an opportunity for him to train without being considerate to Sylvia and Helen. It would have been absurd to throw away this chance. It's true. I can do it, so trust me. Whether you can do it or not isn't important. The problem is that your health can get worse. Rayon narrowed his eyes, seeing Sylvia's worried gaze. That's what she meant. Their point of view was different. He was talking about being able to handle the training, and Sylvia was worrying about his health. Because only the results were important when he was an assassin, he didn't understand Sylvia's heart. Then I will give up as soon as my health becomes worse. In order to lessen Sylvia's worries, he gave her a new answer. You don't even say anything when you are sick. How am I supposed to trust you? I promise. Ha! Sylvia grabbed her head and sighed. Lady Sylvia, how about trying to believe in young Master Rayon for once? Helen, you should also know what kind of child Rayon is. It's true that the training is harsh, but the current head instructor has the best insight in Zeekhart. He should be aware of the young master's condition, so he will stop him before it gets any worse. Ha! Sylvia sighed at Helen's words, and gently looked down at him. Rayon, can you really promise? You must tell me as soon as anything feels weird in your body, okay? Okay. Rayon nodded firmly. I will believe you this once. Thank you. However, I can't sit here doing nothing. What? I'll visit the 5th training ground. I need to give them a warning, at least. After saying that, she ran from the room. Young Master Rayon. Once Sylvia left, Helen knelt and met his eyes. Never, never push yourself. If it becomes difficult, you must give up immediately. Do you understand me? I understand. You've already said it multiple times. It isn't enough, even if I say several thousands of times, let alone multiple times. Young Master must remember that you are weaker than other children and abandon your overconfidence. I understand. Because Helen was just as worried as Sylvia, he simply nodded. I'm sorry, but I'm never going to be the one to give up first. Even if he died from his lungs exploding, he wasn't going to stop. The higher the difficulty, the higher the level the ring of fire would grow. It would make both his mind and body stronger. Rayon headed to the small garden behind the annex building. It feels so empty after visiting the main building. Unlike the main building, which had multiple facilities including an expansive training ground and a fashionable garden, the annex building only had a small garden and a lake. It was so small that it was impossible to train without being noticed by Sylvia, but it was still an elegant place. Rayon sat down on the chair in the garden. The training should be quite difficult. Just as Sylvia and Helen worried, his body was still not perfect. Coldness remained in his mana circuit, his development was slow, and his stamina was lacking. Considering how widespread the notorious Zeekhart training was, it was safe to assume that even a child's basic training was going to be difficult. However, he had the memories from his past life, where he went through a hell worse than that. With that memory, he was never going to crumble. This is the real beginning. If learning the Ring of Fire was the preparation of the land, then the training he'd begin next month was the foundation work to build a house. In order to construct a tall building later, the foundation needed to be solid. I will show them. I will accomplish a greater achievement than anyone else from the direct line, so that everyone who laughed at us will shut their mouth. And that bastard, Darius Robert. His revenge would be delayed a little, but his real objective was Darius Robert, the Sky Sword Saint. Until the day he unmasked him and cut his throat, he would never stop. Ha! After looking at the golden sun setting down to the western mountain, he closed his eyes and took the mana into his body. The ring of fire surrounding his heart started spinning violently. Chapter 7. Every single one of them were first-rate organizations, but if asked which one is the most gallant of them all, 5 people out of 10 would answer the Striding Steeds. That Striding Steeds division leader Karun Zeekhart, who was also the second son of Lord Glenn, tooted with a frown. Zeekhart owned multiple powerful armed organizations, befitting their reputation as ruler of the North. Didn't you say that he was a patient, one who can't even move properly? Many maids heard the conversation between the ragged saint and my lord. He is suffering from a severe illness, for sure. I have heard that as well. Just like the last time I saw him, his body wasn't normal today, either. However, Karun Zeekhart tapped the desk, which caused not only the desk, but also the whole office, to tremble. He withstood father's pressure. The pressure that Glenn had emitted at the ceremony could be compared to a firefly, while his full pressure was like the sun. However, a 12-year-old, and a sickly one at that, managed to withstand it. It was an unbelievable sight, despite seeing it with his own eyes. Would Ben have been able to withstand it? There was no response, as Karun seemed to be talking to himself. No, he wouldn't. Ben was his son, who had started to train at the age of 7, and he had frequently fed him high-quality elixirs. And even with such an upbringing, Ben wouldn't have withstood his father's pressure. So the fact that Rayon did kept bothering him. Sylvia was also very talented, more than anyone. She was disabled because of her energy center and mana circuit breaking, but her talent was undisputable. Is it possible to send someone to the annex building? It will take some time, but it's possible. The butler, who was waiting in front of the door, nodded. Then do it. Karun turned away with sparkling eyes. Report everything that happens there. Rayon left his room before morning light. After a quick warm-up in the garden, he started running near the annex building. He had said that he would work out in preparation for the training, so no one should have bothered him. Huff. Although he hadn't been running for a long time, he was already out of breath. His body was much weaker than in his previous life. Ha! He held his breath as he got short of breath. He handled the ring of fire while focusing on the simple action of inhaling through his nose and exhaling through his mouth. Nature's mana was entwined in each breath that passed his lips. The mana particles, which were fluttering like pollen, ran through his mana circuits to give vitality to his body and suppress the emerging coldness. It's a good flow. Rayon nodded. The ring of fire was most effective when combined with physical activities. That was why he was able to handle the mana at a level and purity much more superior than usual. His clothes were wet with sweat, and he felt burnt out. However, he couldn't stop himself from smiling from the vitality the ring of fire was generating. Rayon. While he was trying to focus more on the bliss of training that stimulated his whole body, Sylvia's head poked out of the window that burst open. Why are you overdoing it from the first day? Huff, huff. Rayon slowed his steps and started panting. You're sweating so much. That was way too much. It just started. Breathing heavily, he lowered his head. It wasn't a bother. She did well stopping me. Sylvia was correct this time. He was more like a patient, so he would have gotten sick if he kept running, despite the vitality from the Ring of Fire. I still have plenty of time. There was still a month before the start of basic training. It was enough time to raise the 2-star Ring of Fire up to 3-star, so he needed to proceed slowly, without haste. I'm going to rest in my room. How is your body? Does it feel bad anywhere? He shook his head at Sylvia, who was looking around his body with concerned eyes. No. I think I need to stop for today and rest. If you overdo it again tomorrow, I'm going to forbid you from training. Don't worry. Rayon smiled lightly and went to his room. Now, I shall practice with the vertical ring. The Ring of Fire that rotated horizontally developed the body, while the Ring of Fire that rotated vertically developed the mind. He had been practicing with the horizontal Ring of Fire up to that point, so it was time to practice with the vertical one. Rayon closed his eyes while sitting on the floor. He took in nature's mana with a greater mental focus than when he was running. Bzzzt. A flimsy shadow started to form next to the 2 rings of fire that were rotating around his heart. Glenn Sieghart left the Lord's Manor and headed to the 5th training ground, alone. Upon entering, he could see the instructors strengthening the yellow ground that hundreds of trainees would use. Greeting my lord. Glenn waved his hand to the instructor's greetings and entered the head instructor's room, located on the periphery of the training ground. There was a rocking chair in the middle of the messy room, and a man was lying on top of it as if he was dead, a straw hat covering his face. Stop pretending to sleep and get up. Ugh. The man on the rocking chair took off his straw hat with a cloudy voice. The handsome man, appearing to be about 20 years old, got up while yawning. His red hair was loose around his face. His ears, which pointed up like blades of grass, were different from a human's. His mysterious appearance seemed otherworldly. With a beautiful appearance and pointy ears, the head instructor of the 5th training ground wasn't a human, but an elf, the race of nature. My lord is the only person against whom my sleeping technique doesn't work. The other instructors are busy hardening the ground, yet the head instructor. They are merely following my orders. I'm working with my brain, and they are working with their body, so it's fair. Rimmer, it's been 50 years, but you are still so childish. Like the saying goes, humans never change. Oops, I'm an elf. The elf named Rimmer stood from his chair, giggling. Why did you bestow your presence upon me today? Is it because of your youngest grandson, by any chance? Without responding, Glenn stared at Rimmer. As comrades in arms, they seemed to understand what each other was thinking just from meeting each other's eyes. Sylvia came to beg, but I didn't expect my lord to also come. Did Sylvia? She asked me to take care of Rayon, so that he won't get hurt. If my lord also came to make such a request, then you've wasted your time. Rimmer's playful green eyes became dispirited. My lord said that, even as the head of the house, you wouldn't interfere with this training ground. I'm not going to make any exceptions, even if he is your youngest grandson. Then so be it. I'm sorry? Rimmer's jaw dropped as Glenn nodded. Don't lower the training's intensity, and raise it as much as you want instead, so that a weakling would drop out. You want me to increase the intensity, instead of decreasing it? Yes. Then your grandson will fail. Ah. Rimmer clapped his hands and smiled. Wow, it looks like you love your grandson more than I thought. The love that you couldn't give to Sylvia is now going to that child. If you weren't my comrade in arms, your head would be flying right now. Oh-ho-ho. With a creepy grin, he touched his neck. Clearly discriminate gems from pebbles, so that only those who deserve it can receive your training. Are you asking me to do a selection test? Use whatever method you prefer. Understood. Then I'm leaving. Yes, sir. Glenn left the place as Rimmer saluted. The instructors were still strengthening the ground as he left. Glenn looked in the western direction where the annex building was located, then turned around to walk towards the Lord's Manor. His steps looked heavier than usual. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Rayon was sitting in his room with his closed eyes. Golden smoke started to rise from his shoulders, which had remained immobile for more than 3 hours. The 3rd ring of fire has been obtained. The ring of fire has reached 3-star. Your body and soul have become a little stronger with the effect of the ring of fire, 3 stars. Strength, agility, and stamina have increased with the effect of the ring of fire, 3 stars. Mana affinity, willpower and energy have increased with the effect of the ring of fire, 3 stars. Water resistance has reached 3-star. 1 strand of the curse of frost has disappeared. I did it. Rayon clenched his fist, looking at the translucent message that appeared in front of him. Status window. Name, Rayon Zeekhart. Title, None. State, Curse of Frost, 8 strands, poor stamina, decline in athletic ability, decline in mana affinity. Trait, Ring of Fire, 3-star, water resistance, 3-star. Asterisk additional abilities have not been unlocked. 3-star is on a whole different level. His body became more perceptive, as if his entire body had been swept up by the refreshing mana, and his mind had become clearer. With his mana circuit becoming broader, the coldness was less painful and the muscles in his arms and legs had started to take form. This is certainly more effective now that it's past the novice stage. Ring of Fire was at its apprentice stage now that it had reached 3 stars. Even though he had barely reached that stage, he could feel the huge improvement in his mind and body. The status window must have played a crucial role as well. The magical message and status window were probably helping the Ring of Fire become way more effective than in his previous life. 1 strand of the Curse of Frost has disappeared, as well. He stood and casually moved his body. Feeling as light as a feather, he was confident that he could handle basic training, no matter how difficult it was. No, it's more than that. It wasn't just about handling the training. He felt like he wouldn't even lose to the so-called genius children of Zeekhart. While he was so thrilled about it, his stomach rumbled. He realized that he had skipped both lunch and dinner. Shall I go eat? He left the room and made his way to the dining room. Inside the dimly lit dining room, Sylvia was sitting at the table. Why is Mom here at this hour? I've been waiting so I can eat with my son. Sylvia smiled and patted the chair next to her. But it's late. Although it was way past dinner time, since he had been forming his 3rd Ring of Fire, Sylvia pulled out the chair while smiling. It's okay. Sit down, quick. Rayon sat down next to Sylvia with an awkward expression on his face. Helen. Yes. Helen's voice could be heard from the kitchen. Soon after, the maids brought out the food, all of which were his favorites. Rayon. Sylvia smiled awkwardly, all while pushing dishes towards him. Mommy has something to tell you today. Something to tell me? Yes. She nodded and stayed silent for a while. Because Rayon is smart, you must have thought it was weird. Why do we live separately, and why do others insult us? Rayon put down the fork he was holding. It looked like Sylvia wanted to tell him about the past before training began. Even though he had a rough idea of what it was, he pretended that he didn't. Mommy is a criminal. Despite running away from her responsibilities, she returned and begged for her life. The start of Sylvia's story was heavier than he thought. She fell in love with his father, who she happened to meet during her mission. In order to be with him, an average night, she ran away from the household after breaking her mana circuit and energy center. Actually, you had a big sister. She was 2 years older than you and was named Shia. Then, my big sister is? Yes. Her voice became more subdued, like flowing water at the bottom floor of an underground cavern. A cadre from Eden recognized my face and attacked us. There was nothing we could do, as your father wasn't that strong, and I was pregnant with you. Eden was one of the 5 demons that opposed the 6 kings, where Zeekhart belongs. Despite its warm name, it was a monstrous organization with lots of strong people, even more than the kingdom itself. Then how did Mom return? My father had secretly assigned a guard for me. Because they stayed away from us, they only managed to arrive after your father and sister were killed. Grandfather did? Rayon narrowed his eyes. He couldn't have imagined that the cold-blooded Glenn would have assigned a guard. That's why Mommy is a criminal in this household. I really have no excuse for your grandfather. Sylvia lowered her head, and Helen and the maids clenched their fists. Rayon gently looked at Sylvia. Selfish. Sylvia was selfish. She ran away from her household's responsibility for her own happiness and came back to beg for her life. It was understandable why both the direct and collateral lines treated her so harshly. However, she was the one who gave him a new life, and a love that he had never felt before. Even if everyone else called her selfish, she was the only mother he had ever known throughout 2 lives. Mom. Sylvia raised her head as Rayon called her name. Do you regret it? Regret? Do you want to return to before you left the household? No, I don't regret it. Sylvia firmly shook her head. She said that she lived like a human for the first time after meeting father and my sister, contrary to how she had lived like an invisible person in her household. But I'm sorry for what I did to you. Because your mom is such a bad person. Were you happy? Yes. I was happy back then, and I'm also happy now. Then it's okay. R.A. Rayon? I'm okay. Don't mind me. Rayon smiled and grabbed the fork once again. It's okay to be selfish. It was fine if others called her selfish. Even if they called her a runaway, a coward, it was okay if she got insulted. But I'm going to take it all back. The position of Sieghart's direct line, which she had lost. He decided that he would first get that position back to her, before finishing the revenge that he planned to get. Sylvia sobbed. Young Master Rayon. As a teardrop fell from Sylvia's big eyes, Helen and other maids who standing next to them also started to silently cry. Rattle. Inside the annex building's dining room, the rattling of tableware and sniffing sounds formed an unusual harmony. After sending Sylvia and the maids back with puffy eyes, Rayon returned to his room. I should check before going to sleep. It seemed to be a good idea to clean his mind and body with the ring of fire, which had become 3-star, before sleeping. The rings surrounding his heart rotated and throbbed, as if they were alive. It certainly looked like the 3 stars made the rings rotate faster, and the effects on his body and mind were further enhanced. This is good. 3 stars were so effective, despite being the start of the apprentice stage, so it was worth looking forward to how impressive the intermediate stage was going to be. Rayon rotated the rings of fire 5 times, then went to bed. Just as he was about to close his eyes, after turning off the lights, messages that he had never seen before appeared. Trait has been activated. Trait Wrath has been created. Wrath awakens. Chapter 8. Wrath? Rayon swallowed hard and looked around. There is somebody here. Although it wasn't visible or audible, a presence had appeared in the room where he used to be alone. It must have been the wrath from the message. Flash. A blue flame ignited before his eyes as he stayed vigilant. From the fist-sized flame, a terrifying wave emerged, resembling the eminence of a volcanic eruption. Finally, from the inside of the blue flame, a chilly voice sounded. It sent shivers down his spine. A madness that could explode at any moment was contained in the voice. What is this? He had a considerable amount of knowledge due to his previous life, but he had never heard nor seen a talking flame. The wrath that you have nurtured has reached the King of Essence. Under the name of the second monarch of Devildom, Wrath, I will grant your revenge. Offer your mind and body. The blue flame that introduced himself as Wrath, the monarch of Devildom, dropped its jaws after looking him up and down. A child? Why is a child? What are you? Who are you? The wrath that reached me wasn't an emotion that a child still wet behind his ears could possess. Wrath's voice was low but contained turbulent feelings. Wrath? Rayon frowned. He might have felt it in his previous life, but he had never been infuriated in his current life. Hold on, previous life? When he thought about it, he had obtained the mysterious ability called Status Window after being reincarnated with the memories of his previous life. That had occurred after he had died. He came to the realization that it could have been Wrath that gave him those special abilities. Was it you who gave me the Status Window? Status Window? You can use it? Yes. Nonsense. The blue flame surrounding Wrath convulsed. The connection was lost. Why? Who are you, and why did you show up here? You are the one who called the King of Essence. I called you? You blazed out in anger. You said you would kill someone at any cost. The advent of the King of Essence was to grant your wish. Ah, he remembered swearing he would kill Darius Robert at any cost. From what he said, it looked like the flame had appeared in front of him because of his anger back then. But it's too late. There was 2 years of time lapse between his previous and current life, and it had been 12 years since he was born. He wasn't sure what he was going to do, being 14 years late. Did you say you would grant me revenge? Indeed. What is the cost? Passionate flames ignited in Rayon's eyes. Nothing is free in the world. From what you said earlier, are you going to take my body and soul? If you crave your revenge, it is only natural to offer your paltry mind and body. He patiently looked down at Wrath. Something could be seen, confined inside the blue flame. An inhuman existence was giving a wicked smile. Did this happen because I was reincarnated? If he had to guess, it must have been because he had died in his previous life, before Wrath could take over his body. Revenge is meaningless if not achieved by me. He had been played by Darius his entire life, but finally got a new chance after dying. He couldn't accept somebody else granting him revenge. I have to do it myself. No matter how difficult it was, he was going to cut off Darius' head by himself. He had no intention of leaving it to others. Excuse me. You're right. Wrath glared at him with eyes hidden inside the blue flame. You are hiding a deep and dark wrath at the bottom of your heart. He smiled with his teeth. I don't care what happened. The King of Essence has already decided, so you just have to offer your body. As anger burned up from Wrath's voice, the blue flame struck him. Ku. Rayon grabbed his chest, bending at the waist. It was cold. Not only his body, but his mind was also frozen. Wrath's affinity wasn't fire, but ice. Think of him and increase your anger. The King of Essence will kill him for you, even if he is a god. His heart was pounding because of Wrath's creepy voice. It felt as if his heart was pierced by an icicle. Water resistance, 3-star, is activating. Water resistance. The water resistance that he had obtained from absorbing the coldness was reducing the pain from Wrath's icy power. However, Wrath's attack wasn't just ice. Ku. Rayon moaned painfully. He remembered Dara's face, the way he laughed while looking down on him like a bug, making him gasp. Leave your body to the King of Essence. I will break his skull and chew on his flesh. Rayon gasped for breath. As Wrath's voice incited his emotions, Rayon wanted to explode with his anger towards Darius. Absolutely not. Rayon bit back his emotions as hard as he could. If he left his body to Wrath, he could do terrible things to Sylvia and the maids. Even if he were to die there, he couldn't give him his body. I have to endure. He clenched his fist to bleed. He was an assassin, and the best one at that. Patience and emotionlessness were the qualities of an assassin. You are enduring better than I thought, but for how long? No one can win against the icy power of the King of Essence. As if Wrath was mocking him, he released an icy power capable of freezing his mind and body. Huff. It was a relief. It was going to be difficult to hold on if he kept inciting his emotions, but he chose to enhance his icy power instead. Rayon caught his breath and withstood the icy power penetrating to his bones. A mere human dares. Wrath's burning voice was irritated and angry. I wanted to avoid harming the body that the King of Essence was going to use, but it can't be helped. I'm going to devour you alive. It wasn't an exaggeration. As his flame grew bigger, the intensity of the icy wave assailing his mind and body increased immensely. Ku. Unable to withstand it, Rayon groaned. His lip parted as he felt the pain of his flesh being torn apart and organs being severed. Raise your anger and accept the King of Essence. Are you planning to die? I'd rather die than give my body to someone like you. He bit his tongue to come to his senses. The moment he resolved to die rather than giving Wrath his body, he had an idea. Wait. If water resistance can block his icy power, then the ring of fire might be able to lower the pain in both his body and mind. Even if it didn't, he had to give it a try. Rayon forcefully calmed his mind and started rotating the rings of fire. The 3 rings of fire around his heart started to spin violently. Ring of Fire, 3-star, is greatly reducing the damage to your mind and body. It went as expected. The Ring of Fire was a cultivation technique that could develop and protect the mind and body. Therefore, it was also effective at enduring external stimulation. The Ring of Fire rotated rapidly, bringing vitality to his body and mind. The emotions that were about to explode started to subside. The willpower that he had built up from his previous life, the Ring of Fire, and water resistance combined, greatly reducing the pain and stimulus that Wrath was inflicting. What are you? Wrath's voice was astonished. Whoosh. His barrage of icy power gradually became weaker. It looked like he couldn't stick to him if he didn't increase his anger. How did a mere human child? I am a human, but I am not a child. Casting off the subsiding icy power, Rayon responded calmly. This doesn't make any sense. Not at all. Wrath came away from his body while screaming furiously. His lips were shaking like a scared colt. Even though it hasn't been long since I woke up, for the King of Essence to be pushed back by a mere human. Ha. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Rayon exhaled and glared at Wrath. His flame wavered like a lamp in the wind. Revenge is mine to take. I'm not leaving my body to a minor demon. Minor demon? You dare call a monarch of Devildom a minor demon? You can't even deal with me, and yet call yourself a monarch of Devildom. I guess all the other monarchs are dead. Are you for real? Wrath amplified his flame once again, but only the size increased. The icy power was a lot weaker than before. He said he just woke up. Waking up from a sleep, or a seal. Either way it looked like he couldn't use his full force. As Rayon shook it off violently, Wrath's fire was thrown off, fluttering away like a paper. The sound of Wrath grinding his teeth could be heard from the inside of the blue flame. I'm impossible. How are you controlling your emotions? There is no need to tell you. Now disappear. You took the power of the King of Essence. How can you ask me to leave? Wrath glared at him with rage and hate. And the King of Essence has already decided. Before you died, I couldn't separate from you even if I wanted to. Ah. Rayon aimed a punch at the mumbling Wrath. Although the flame dispersed, he couldn't feel the blow. It was as if he'd punched empty space. Then, he gathered mana on his fingertips. It was lousy compared to aura, but still better than nothing. Swoosh! He slashed with the mana-enhanced hand knife, but Wrath just revived like a candlelight that had managed to withstand the wind. What are you doing? TSK, this won't work, either. Wrath was like a soul and didn't have a physical body. Because of that, it didn't seem like he would disappear even if he used an aura. Now that I think about it. Even though Wrath let out his intense power, the swordsmen who were guarding the annex building didn't barge in. It must have been because Rayon was the only one who could see or feel him. How do I make you disappear? Give your body to the King of Essence. Then, you must be crazy. As Rayon sneered, a message popped up. Ding! An additional ability has been unlocked. An additional ability? Rayon immediately opened the status window. Status window. Name, Rayon Zeekhart. Title, None. State, Curse of Frost, 8 strands, poor stamina, decline in athletic ability, decline in mana affinity. Trait, Wrath, Ring of Fire, 3-star, Water Resistance, 3-star. The question marks that occupied the first slot of the trait were replaced by Wrath. But that wasn't the important part. There was new information under the status window. Strength, 13. Agility, 13. Stamina, 12. Energy, 12. Perception, 40. The abilities, such as strength and agility, were evaluated with numbers. YUVE really got the status window. Cold frost spilled from Wrath's mouth. It seemed that he couldn't see the contents of the status window, as he murmured that he could only see the silhouette. What is the status window and the message? It's a system that the King of Essence created. System? For what? I have no reason to tell you. To accelerate growth? How? How did you? I knew it. Like a reflex, he responded as soon as he felt him out. Just like his name suggested, Wrath couldn't hide his feelings. It's as I expected. Rayon nodded. He thought it was weird that the Ring of Fire was more efficient than in his previous life, and it was because of the system. Give it back. Your body, my power, give them all back. Wrath started to throw a tantrum. He looked like a baby sitting on a massive throne. I don't know how to give them back, nor do I have any intention to do so. He obtained the ability to grow faster, to a higher peak. There was no reason to give it back to the madman that tried to take his body. It's not yours. And you tried to take my body, which is not yours. The King of Essence heard your wishes. I did desire revenge, but that is something I must do myself. It's meaningless if I realize it by giving up my body to something I don't understand like you. Ku. Wrath ground his teeth but couldn't open his mouth, as he had nothing to say. Go away, now. Rayon turned away as he finished the conversation. I can't go. I won't leave until you give me back my power. Wrath screeched and assaulted Rayon. The moment Rayon clenched his fist, thinking he would cope with it as much as he wanted, Wrath's body started to shine blue. The blue flame flowed like water to wind around his wrist. Rayon prepared for the incoming pain, but it didn't hurt at all. Zoom. The blue flame around his wrist disappeared and a bracelet appeared. It was a flowery bracelet made from ice. I'm going to stick with you until the day you die. Wrath provoked him by shaking the flower hanging on the bracelet. It hasn't been long since I woke up, but my power will soon return. When that happens, you won't be able to stop me, no matter what you do. Sure. Rayon tried to take off the bracelet, but just like when he tried to touch the flame, it just dispersed instead of being caught. But it didn't look completely ineffective as the bracelet vibrated, and Wrath stopped talking each time he touched it. Ku, it's useless. The King of Essence will never be chased away. Let's try it, then. He tried to scratch, pull, rub it against the wall, and trample on the bracelet. However, Wrath didn't disappear. He was very tenacious. Tisk. He tooted. The flowery bracelet didn't disappear, no matter what he did. Even though I do want to remove it. It might be better to just leave it be. The system could disappear if he forcefully took it off, and there was a chance that the demon would transfer to Sylvia or Helen. Like the saying goes, keep your friends close, and enemies closer. It would be better to keep him nearby, instead of having him plotting somewhere unseen. Counting on the ring of fire and water resistance to keep growing, he decided to keep Wrath under control. If you aren't going to get off, then change your appearance at least. A bracelet with flowers doesn't suit you. Rayon frowned. He could at least understand if it were a skull, but he didn't want to wear a flowery bracelet. Respect my taste. Ha! He was at a loss for words at how the taste of this violent and impatient guy was a flowery bracelet. The King of Essence has never let go of his prey. Your body and mind are mine. I'd better ignore it. Coo! You damn brat. Rayon blocked his hearing and went to bed. Wrath whimpered, but he ignored him. But if Wrath is the system's owner, and doesn't know that I was reincarnated, then who reincarnated me? Rayon murmured the new question and closed his eyes. Creak. Wrath ground his teeth, looking at the sleeping Rayon. How can a human like this exist? Even though he wasn't at full power, he had never thought a human could stop his possession, let alone a 10-year-old child, asterisk. It doesn't make any sense. Although he was from a different age, he had seen countless humans. Among them was a hero that founded a country with his sword, and a villain that made the whole continent tremble in fear. But it was the first time seeing a human like him. It was as irritating as if he was looking at that guy. Just you wait. The day the King of Essence's power returns, I'm going to devour your soul. Wrath declared, unable to hold in his rage. That won't happen, stop dreaming. The young human shook his hand, as if he was driving away flies. The King of Essence never gives up. I said it won't. T/N, Rayon is small for his age, and Wrath doesn't seem to actually know much about him or how much time has passed. Otherwise, he'd realize that he hadn't been a child when he summoned him. Chapter 9. The day dawned. Rayon left the annex building with the luggage he had prepared beforehand. Sylvia and the maids were lined up in the garden, waiting for him. See you later. Sylvia got dewy-eyed as Rayon waved his hand under their worried gaze. I'm glad that I'm going alone. If Sylvia tagged along, he wouldn't have reached the training ground. It was a relief that only trainees were allowed on the training ground. Lady Sylvia, are you going to part with the young master with that expression? Sylvia's expression loosened up at Helen's remark. Rayon. Sylvia fidgeted as she stood in front of Rayon. She was still worried, but she couldn't tell him to give up anymore. Because I saw what kind of child he is. Rayon didn't skip training for a single day over the past month, even as he withstood the coldness coming from his mana circuit. He ran over and over, every day, while breathing out that painfully cold breath. She couldn't send off a child who strived so earnestly with a sad look. Good luck, Rayon. Sylvia smiled, trying to control her wavering mind and her worries. Thank you. Rayon nodded, then turned back. Without delay, he started walking towards the 5th training ground. Is he going to be alright? He got a lot better. He might even pass the training at this rate. I'm not even wishing for that. I just want him to come back safe and sound. That would be for the best. Sylvia and Helen didn't stop looking at Rayon's back, which got farther and farther away. They prayed for his safe return, regardless of the result. The 5th training ground looked like a long box, as tall walls preventing the view from the outside formed a rectangle around the area. To the right side of the entrance there was an outdoor gymnasium, covered in fine soil. And to the left side there was an indoor gymnasium with a roof. Rayon looked around the training ground, then looked at the children lined up at the center. Just like I've heard, there are a lot of them. Despite it being still early, over 100 children were warming up all around the training ground. He had heard that there were that many people every time because there were children recommended from the outside or vassal families, on top of Zekehart's direct line and the collaterals. They said there were more people than usual this time. Helen had told him that the 6th training ground could also be used that year because of how many people there were. Crunch. He turned around at the snapping sound. A round-faced child with green hair was eating crackers. Do you want some? As Rayon stared at him, he took more crackers from his pocket and held them out. No, thank you. All right. He nodded, then put his hand back to his pocket. This time, he took out a piece of rectangular bread. As Rayon was about to warm up, thinking that it was interesting, he heard a cold voice speak. That's him, right? Look at those frail limbs. They look like they'll break if you touch them. Can he really train? A patient should take it easy and give up. I don't understand why he is being so annoying. I closed my eyes when I saw him arguing with the clan leader. It looks like he thinks he is from the direct line. He really doesn't know his place. Collateral children were loudly criticizing him. It looked like the rumor had already spread, since many children were glaring at him. Look at that bracelet? A flowery bracelet? What is he, a baby? Collaterals giggled, looking at the bracelet on Rayon's wrist. It seemed like the bracelet could be seen by the others. Are they perhaps speaking about the King of Essence? Wrath shuddered, after having been quiet up to that point, as if asleep. That's why I told you to change the way the bracelet looks. They are trash with no taste. What are you doing? Smash their skulls already. Wrath's voice was boiling with anger. For what? They aren't only mocking the King of Essence, but also picking a fight with you. Are you saying that you are tolerating them? You don't even know what happened. I don't care. If they looked straight at the King of Essence, that's enough reason to pluck their eyes out. I'm not crazy like you. He was relieved that he didn't give his body to that madman. Rayon turned around and looked at the collaterals, who were still running their mouths. Although they flinched a little, they provocatively stuck their chins out. I would have ignored it in my previous life. Since an assassin shouldn't draw any attention, he would have turned away, pretending that he hadn't heard anything. However, he had decided to live his current life as Rayon Zeekhart, not as an assassin. There was no reason to ignore them. What did you just say? Rayon menacingly approached the children. They looked flustered, as they hadn't expected him to come up to them. Huh? What are you saying? Stop buzzing like a mosquito and speak clearly. That is. The children from the collateral line didn't know what to do, so they awkwardly looked at each other. I knew it. Those children were just repeating what their parents said. It was the kind of situation that didn't even need a proper solution. Haven't you learned not to talk about people behind their back if you cannot speak to their faces? Shut up. How dare you, when you were ruined and forced to live in the annex building. You are collateral, not of the direct line. You are also collateral. The word dare is used when you are talking to someone in a lower position than you. You don't have the right to say that to me. Rayon's voice wasn't loud, nor quiet, as he was simply stating the facts. Coup. The three collaterals spread their feet and clenched their fists, as if they were going to strike at any time. Snap. Rayon stretched his fingers. It wasn't a bad idea to warm up and attract some attention before the training started. Screw you. Stop. When the collaterals were about to charge, a stern scolding was heard. It was from a handsome, blue-haired boy in his early teens. Who does he think he is to get in the way? Break his skull. Is that Ben? He was of the direct line, the one who had the best talent at the judgment ceremony. What are you all doing when the training is about to start? Are you planning to blacken the name of Zeekhart in front of outsiders? He'd expected he would take the three brats' side, but he scolded everyone instead. Boo Ben. I apologize. A single word from Ben was enough to make the collaterals bow like mice in front of a cat, despite how they were about to charge at Rayon. And you still don't know your place. After getting the apology from the collaterals, Ben approached Rayon. You are like dust that can be removed at any time. If you don't want to be cast out of the annex building as well, then stay as quiet as a mouse. Ben frowned with obvious contempt. Good for nothing. The foolish guy in front of him had taken the undivided attention of the head of house a month before, using the circumstances instead of his own abilities. Incompetence was what he hated the most, and arrogance that doesn't know its place was second to that. And Rayon Zeekhart had them both. He was a loser that was going to drop out from the training, and the fact that he had drawn the head of house's attention made him irritated. If you aren't planning to participate in the training, then get out of here. No, just get out of my sight, since there is no way you will manage to pass the training. As Ben admonished him, the collateral sneered. When they were about to return with satisfied expressions, Rayon took a step ahead. That's such a boorish way of talking rubbish. Rayon inclined his chin. With a tilted gaze, he looked straight at Ben. Who do you think you are? What? You are of the direct line, but you don't have any rank. You're going to cast me out of the annex building? Do you think you can do that when you aren't even a trainee yet? Oh, I guess you might have a chance if you cry to your father. How dare you, collateral. Green wind covered Ben's fist. When he approached Rayon with bloodthirsty eyes, the door to the training ground cracked open. Slam! Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. A red-haired man walked past the door, which was still vibrating. With pointy ears and heavenly appearance, he had both a mysterious and cheerful atmosphere around him. Are you fighting already? You have a lot of guts. I guess it's because you're still young. Too young, actually. He grinned and moved to the center of the training ground. That guy works here? Rayon narrowed his eyes. There was no way he wouldn't know him, since he was Zeekhart's Sword of Light, the elf swordsman Rimmer, who was extremely famous. I heard he had retired. There was news that he was injured in a dungeon and ended up retiring, so he hadn't expected to meet him there. Humph. Rimmer glanced at Rayon and Bun, then went to the platform that allowed him to look down on the whole training ground. Ahem. Bun bit his lips and turned around. His expression seemed to imply that he would forgive Rayon this time, but that he should be careful next time. Nice to meet you. Rimmer smiled from the platform. I'm the head instructor Rimmer, who is going to oversee your training. His voice was bright, not in a frivolous way, but cheerful. Keeping a laid-back smile, he continued. There are 160 trainees, but only 8 instructors. As you must also be thinking that there are too many trainees, let's reduce that number. A quarter would be ideal. Rimmer's laid-back smile became slightly mischievous. Reduce? To a quarter? What are you talking about? The children's faces went ashy pale. It was the first time they'd heard of trainees being weeded out before basic training. We will distinguish between gems and pebbles, quite literally. I'd rather train some quality swordsman over quantity. Rimmer waved his finger at the children, as if he were choosing products. I came here because I was told to. The green-haired child who held out a cracker earlier dropped the bread he was holding. I'm a Zeekhart collateral. It's nonsense to weed me out before becoming a trainee. That's true. We were all ordered to participate by the family. I'm dumb, so I don't know about the direct line or collateral lines. Rimmer frowned while picking his ear with his pinky finger. I'm the law on this training ground. If you aren't happy about it, complain to the Lord who made me the law. Despite looking like a ruffian rather than a head instructor, his good-looking appearance still managed to make him look cool. Weeding out. Rayon scratched his chin. He heard that Rimmer was extremely talented at feeling his opponent's spirit and potential. It seemed that he was going to use that to make a selection. Who is that arrogant guy? What? He dares to look down on me. I don't like it. Pluck off that elf's ears. Is there even anyone that you do like? As his name suggested, Wrath was angry at everything. It didn't seem like he liked anything at all. Back in the Devil Dom, nobody could see my eyes. As the true monarch that every demon admired. Why you? Shut up. Because Wrath started to talk for too long, he tapped the bracelet. Then let's start the test. Rimmer blew away the earwax on his pinky finger. What do you think the most important thing is when learning martial arts? It's talent. It's a strong and flexible body. A steady energy center. The way of training for swordsmanship and aura is the most important. The children seemed to think that the test had already started, as they shouted what they thought was the most important with their hands raised. Talent, body, energy center, swordsmanship, those are all correct. However, those are just the walls and roof. There is a groundwork that needs to be laid under them. It's stamina and willpower. The children lowered their hands and nodded, believing that he was right. Some of you have already learned martial arts, and others haven't. As such, I'm going to use the simplest, yet the most certain, method to evaluate you. Rimmer's finger, which had been pointed at the children, moved towards the outdoor gymnasium. Run laps in the gymnasium until I tell you to stop. At full speed. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 people moved. It was Bun, from the direct line, who was at the judgment ceremony with Rayon, and Renan, from the vassal family Sullian. Eek. Let's go. Run. The other children followed the 2 and started running in the gymnasium. Don't move. Nobody is allowed to order the King of Essence. Rayon ignored Wrath and filled his lungs with fresh air. He kicked the ground, following the children running in front of him. They are indeed different. Renan and Bun were running way ahead already. Despite looking like they were casually running, they were at a speed that nobody else could catch up to. It wasn't because of their aura being high quality or having a special attribute, but simply because they had trained their minds and bodies from an early age. Ahem. If you have started running, then go to the front. Why are you at the very back? I don't even know what you want anymore. I just don't want to lose. This is not a competition. Rayon looked at Rimmer, who was whistling on the platform. He probed others' potential and spirit. What was visible to the eyes wasn't going to be the only criteria. Hugh. Rayon exhaled with shining eyes. The winner of this test is whoever lasts the longest. And that was something that he was confident about, more than anyone in the continent. Lord Bun and Lady Renan are clearly peerless. It's not just their speed, but they are also stable. They aren't at their full speed, so they should be able to run for hours like that. To be so accomplished at that age, I'm afraid of what they will become. It's scary. The 2 instructors standing under the platform were chatting while looking at the running children. The collaterals this year are also quite capable. They must have been well educated. Same goes for the recommended trainees. There are many competent ones. It looks like they have been picked carefully. They didn't only look at Ben and Renan. They evaluated every single child, including those running at the back. The instructors that were observing every child frowned as they looked at Rayon, running among the group in the back. As expected, he can't catch up. He is a patient. That much is already amazing. He looks tired already. He is going to drop out soon. The instructors calmly looked away to other children, as they had already expected. However, Rimmer, who was humming behind them, had his eyes fixated on Rayon. How curious. Rimmer's green eyes shone brightly. It's my first time seeing someone like him. He had received a blessing of nature brighter than any other race, and he was excellent at discerning others' condition and potential. He thought the only people he couldn't analyze with his talent were the continent's strongest. However, he had to change his mind for the first time. Neither Renan and Ben, who were running at the front, nor the collateral and recommended trainees who were running behind them, could go beyond his insight. He could see how they would grow, and how much stronger they would become. Except for one person. Rayon Zeekhart. Why can't I see it? As if hidden behind a cloud, he couldn't see his future, nor his potential. Because he had no potential? It wasn't something like that. It meant that he was outside of his perception, like when he was looking at those stronger than himself. This is funny. Rimmer smiled. A really interesting human had appeared in such a boring era. Look at that. Is he really in last place after acting all cocky? You can't even call him last place, since he will drop out soon. The collateral smirked, looking at Rayon running among the slowest group. There's no way a guy who grew up comfortably in an annex building can run properly. Look at his face, he's so flustered. He isn't even going to last 10 minutes. Children other than the three collaterals also started laughing. But Rayon didn't have a serious expression because of being worn out. Are they really only going to run when it's training? In his previous life, hungry beasts were released behind them when they were training their stamina. Just running until their stamina ran out was too easy to be true in comparison. It was too easy. Chapter 10. 1 hour had passed since the children started running around the gymnasium. Ben and Renan were still running at the front, and the collaterals, vassal children, and recommended children were neck and neck behind them. Of course, not all 160 of them were running anymore. Those who lacked stamina had already given up and were resting in a corner, and the number of quitters kept increasing even now. Rimmer's eyes quickly moved left and right, despite lying down on the platform and yawning. The 61st guy gave up earlier than his stamina could last, and the 62nd one lasted longer. He was grasping all 160 children at a glance with sleepy eyes. However, stamina wasn't the only thing Rimmer was analyzing. There is no point in just checking their stamina. How much stamina children had depended on how they grew up. Honestly, they were all similar except for the 2 direct lines and the roughly 20 best children. Even if their stamina was similar, some children gave up as soon as they were out of breath, and some kept running until the end, while their sides pinched or they cried. That difference is the most important thing here. Just like there were people who gave up easily, there are also people who never gave up. That difference in willpower that looked small at present would grow to be tremendous in the future. Stamina could be increased, and talents could be nurtured. However, it was extremely difficult to develop perseverance. Children who never gave up wouldn't give up in the future either, and children who gave up easily would grow up to be adults who did the same. Of course, there were exceptions, as some would realize and change their way. However, that was as difficult as finding a needle in a haystack. Looking for a child who already had the perseverance and the willpower was the easiest way. This is pretty much set in stone now. Rimmer smiled. Over half of the children had already given up, and the rest were getting slower as they tired. As Rimmer was preparing to end the exam, the golden-haired child running in the back group crossed his sight. Rayon Zeekhart. He was the only child who had exceeded his expectations. Rimmer's eyes shone like stars. I don't understand it. Rayon had run out of stamina a long time ago. He shouldn't have been able to stand, because of the coldness pressing upon his body and shortening his breath. However, he kept moving his feet relentlessly, without breaking his posture. This can't even be called perseverance anymore. This is obstinacy. He had seen many brilliant talents, throughout countless battlefields. Among them, there were swordsmen who would stand at the top of the continent with their swords, and magicians who would change the standard of the world with their magic. But none of them had as much persistence as Rayon. He kept running even after running out of stamina, especially when he was a 12-year-old child who was born with a terrible constitution. That wasn't possible without having gone through dozens of life-or-death battles. He couldn't figure out just how a sheltered child possibly ended up with such obstinacy. He looked around the entire gymnasium. Renan and Ben, who were staying at the top despite saving their power, were amazing. However, that was nothing compared to Rayon, who was still running with no stamina. The collaterals and the children of vassal families who made fun of Rayon were drooling as they ran, as if they didn't want to lose to him. Haha. Rimmer's lips bent into a smooth arc. It's going to be fun teaching them. Ben Sieghart kept turning back, as he couldn't focus on running. And each time, he had to frown. Why? Why is that guy still running? Rayon Sieghart. He was an insolent child who talked back to the head of house, and he was unexpectedly still going. He was slow, but he kept running at a constant speed until the end. He shouldn't be in a condition to run right now. He already knew Rayon's condition. He was born with coldness, which not only made him incapable of moving his body properly, but also slowed down his growth. And when he saw him for the first time, he looked even more pathetic. He was short, and he didn't have the slightest sign of having trained. And yet, he didn't give up. The collaterals, children of vassal families, and the recommended children whose talents had been acknowledged were already giving up. And yet, he was still running despite, panting like he was going to die. And the person next to me, they're also annoying. Renan, who was the only person who kept up with him, and Rayon, who should have dropped out already, were both irritating. Alright. I'll show you the clear difference. Deciding that he would discourage both Renan and Rayon, he fiercely kicked the ground. Swoosh. Using aura, he amplified the muscles in his thighs and calves. Running at a speed that could create tunnel vision, he looked back. Those brats. Neither Renan, who he thought of as a rival, nor Rayon were showing any kind of reaction. They were both running at their own pace, and it was the collaterals and the children from vassal families who were carelessly following him. Tisk! Ben clicked his tongue and increased his speed. He was now far ahead of Renan, who used to run next to him, and he had already run past Rayon a long time ago. However, Renan and Rayon's speed didn't change. It was like they were telling him that they weren't interested in him. Ku. Realizing that he was ignored by those inferior to him, anger simmered inside him. Let's see until when you can keep up that act. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Huff. Rayon smiled, exhaling vigorously. Power keeps flowing in. His stamina pool had gone empty, resembling a dried-up well a long time ago. His head was spinning so hard that he felt like he would faint, but he managed to withstand it thanks to the vitality the three-starred ring of fire provided him. This is heaven compared to back then. In his previous life, wild dogs chased him when he was younger. He'd run down the mountain while grabbing a heart that felt like it would explode. There were also times when the wild dog had caught him in the end, resulting in a fight to the death. Compared to that hellish life, what he was doing right now was child's play. Huff. Rayon looked forward while panting. The collaterals and the recommended children, who were still running at full speed, were certainly exceptionally talented. However, Renan and Ben were different from them. They were steadily running from the beginning, at a constant speed. Just as he thought that they weren't called geniuses for nothing, Ben suddenly sped up. He ran past Renan and became the front runner. Lo, Lord Ben? Run! Don't fall behind. The collaterals and recommended children who saw him forcibly increased their speed. Humph. As if telling them to catch up, Ben peered at Renan and Rayon. What are you doing right now? Are you going to do nothing when you are provoked? Catch up to him and crush those eyes. Wrath ground his teeth, glaring at Ben, but Rayon didn't react. I told you before. This isn't a competition. The run was a test to show how much stamina and willpower everyone had, not a competition. And there was one more person who knew that fact. Renan Sullian. The silver-haired girl running in second place kept her pace, as if she didn't have a speck of interest in Ben. She is actually one step ahead of him. He'd thought that they were similar, but it looked like Renan was mentally superior to Ben. Ben was pretending to be an adult, but he was acting according to his age. If he went onto the battlefield as he was, he would have died quickly. That's not something I should care about. Rayon kept running in the gymnasium, following Renan's back instead of Ben's. Rayon? How? He was still running? The collaterals who exhausted themselves running after Ben fell behind. They were the ones who were mocking him before the exam had started. Huff, huff. What did you do? Coo, there's no way. As Rayon ran past them, the collaterals that were panting slowed their steps and sat down on the ground. Rayon kept running, using their astonished gaze as a driving force. Pathetic. It's a fact that those who couldn't stop talking no matter where they went were actually worthless. Since he wasn't interested in them to begin with, he forgot about them and kept running. Huff. Rayon kept rotating his ring of fire through slow breaths. The ring is developing rapidly. Even though he hadn't run for a long time, the cultivation of the ring of fire was progressing quickly. After all, the ring of fire was a cultivation technique that showed its true value upon going all out. It's still incredibly difficult, though. The rotating ring of fires didn't make the pain disappear. He felt like his heart and lungs were being crushed, and his side hurt as if it was stabbed by a dagger. How pathetic. Wrath clicked his tongue as he kept running full out. I can't accept defeat from you whose body will become mine. Give your body to me right now. I will catch up and completely freeze that blue-haired brat right now. Shut up. It wasn't a test to catch up. It was a fight against himself. I can't accept defeat as long as the King of Essence has his eyes open. Then close your eyes. It's a miracle that I'm still running like this. It wasn't a lie. Even though he had Wrath's system, he still couldn't get rid of the coldness inside his mana circuits. The ring of fire was a miracle that allowed him to keep running. Then give your body to me. Wrath transformed into the blue flame that he had seen the day before. His anger made him nauseated as it stimulated his emotions. Not now, of all times. Rayon bit his lip. Wrath's stimulation felt twice as painful than the day before because of how tired he was. It's pointless, so go back to sleep already. He kept his calm expression using his ring of fire at full force. He kept moving his legs, pretending he wasn't affected. Coo. Why does the King of Essence's power not work on you? Wrath kept stimulating the angry emotion relentlessly. Huff. Rayon withstood Wrath's mental attack with his already empty stamina. I'm dying. Cold sweat ran down his back. He felt like he would faint at any moment. Thanks to the balance between the ring of fire and the experience of his previous life, one of countless life or death situations, he barely managed to hold on. You stubborn brat. Give up and piss off. Ha! While Rayon was pushing back Wrath's power, Rimmer, who was lying on the platform, suddenly stood up. Everyone, stop. The children who were running in the gymnasium stopped as they heard his clear voice. Huff. Huff. Coo. Ah. The children could hardly keep their eyes open as they panted, sitting on the ground or holding their knees. Huff. Rayon looked like he would die as he panted heavily. What a monster. Wrath grinded his teeth and went back to the bracelet. I told you, you can't. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. The test was difficult, but withstanding Wrath's attack was even more so. If he'd kept running, he could have really died. This life isn't normal either. A new message popped up while he was drinking. Ding! An extreme stamina surpassing action was performed. Ability points have increased.